Okay, dear friends, welcome back to Earth School. I am super, super honored to have an incredible person with me today. Heena is one of my coaches and someone who I have just recently gotten to know and just have such massive respect for already. And I am so grateful that she agreed to come on today and share a little bit about herself. So, welcome, Heena.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. It's such an honor to be here today, honestly. And I was telling you earlier, I don't even know why you thought of me, but I feel like this is going to be amazing. And again, it's such an honor. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I can tell you exactly why. It's because just you don't have to spend any more than like 5 minutes with you to really feel on like an energetic level that you're making choices about who you are on the planet. And that's a very powerful thing. And it's something that's really special and something that is really confusing to a lot of people. And so
Absolutely.
I felt like, ugh, this has gotta be. So I'm so excited that you said yes. So I asked people at the beginning, tell me a little bit about what it feels like to be in your body on this planet right now.
Okay, that's a deep question for sure.
Triple
How it feels
Pisces.
to be in Yeah, triple Pisces. Yeah, that's something else we gotta talk about another day, but you're really intuitive. I'm super earth signy. Like I'm
Mm,
super earth, like Virgo, Capricorn, like all the earth signs. But how it feels like to be in my body, it feels peaceful right now. It didn't feel that way before, for sure. Um, I can tell you a little bit about how it felt before as compared to how it feels now because I feel like that's gonna give kind of like a contrast
yeah.
to it a little bit. I feel like before when I wasn't making my own choices, as you said, when I wasn't really consciously creating my reality, my life or my body felt really like I wanted to get out of it, right? It
Hmm.
felt like I just wanted to like jump out of my body and jump into like this other person's body or like this person that I really admired's body, right? But now it's different because being in my body makes me realize like I came to this earth for a reason. I know that I was put into the specific vessel for a specific reason as well. And beyond all the hurdles and all the challenges that I've had to overcome, it's meant to be for me because I wouldn't have these challenges. I wouldn't have these personalities or all these things coming at me if it wasn't meant to be, right? So now I guess like the word that I would use to describe it would just be like authentic. It feels really
Hmm.
authentic to be in my body right now.
That is so amazing. So you alluded to that there were times when you were experiencing more of that, like, oh, I wish I could be in that person or in that experience. Like, how
Mhm.
early do you first remember having that thought or that desire?
I feel like honestly, the shift has happened really recently, like maybe the past year. But the earliest that I ever felt that, I think, was probably when I was like 15 years old, distinctly 15 years old. Because when I was 15, and honestly, like I don't think I've ever shared this in actually little context about how Z and I met. Um, I'm her coach, kind of on Reality Mastery, which is a group that we're on. If you can check it out, it's like Quasi Joe Here's program. But basically, she doesn't
And
know
you are
a
not
lot of
just in
context.
the program, you're like the point person for the program. You work for
Yeah,
the
I'm
program.
the yeah, exactly. I'm like that person that people reach out to for support. So there's not maybe like a lot of context about me. But to give you a little bit of context now that we're like kind of like in this area right now, when I was in high school, when I was like younger, right now I'm 25, 25, yeah, because I just turned
So
25.
old.
So
So
sometimes,
old.
honestly, sometimes I can't remember my age because I'm like, what? I don't even pay attention to that. Whatever. Um, Point is, yeah, when I was younger, maybe like 15, like high school, just entering freshman year, like even elementary school, middle school, I was like a loser. Like I was such a loser. I was like people were bullying me all the time. Like that was a situation I was in constantly, which now I'm grateful for now that I make my choices. But back then, that's when I first distinctly felt like I need to hop into someone else's body. I
Mhm.
need to get into someone else's like perfect body, or like have the perfect personality, or have a different, like, even ethnicity, because that was a
Yeah.
huge struggle for me. We can get into that later.
Yeah.
But like that was a huge struggle for me. So I feel like in high school was like when it was at its peak, and it
Mhm.
never really stopped. Like we talk about subconscious triggers and all those things all the time in the program as well. And even if it healed a little more throughout, the time that I was growing up, it always was there. It always was like
Mhm.
this little like thing in the back of my head saying like, hey, you need to be different. You need to just like, maybe you shouldn't even be here, like maybe
Mhm.
you shouldn't even be a person in this world, right? So that was a lot of stuff that was coming up. But yeah, like to answer your question, I know I made it super long. When I
No.
was in high school was like that first kind of
Yeah.
experience that I had.
Yeah, and when you were, in that experience of feeling like maybe I shouldn't even be here, a lot of
Hmm.
questions coming up. Do you feel like there were like, of course, culture was enforcing that. I'm sure that,
Hmm.
like so many of us, culture's like, yeah, there's something wrong with you. You need to change. You need to be like A, B, or C. Like, what were the things that you may not have noticed then, but now looking back, you can see were like glimmers of something inside of you or outside of you that was questioning if that was really the case. That like little glimmers of like, but there's something about me that knows like maybe I am okay. Did you have any of that?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's always, I always say nothing's black and white, right? Like whenever you go through struggles, like, and I feel like this happens to a lot of people, and including myself, when you're going through something really hard, there's always some voice that says, wait, I feel like this might not be the end all be all. And I definitely had that, even though it was a small voice.
Mhm.
So I feel like the contrast with what I had was like it was such a big part of my life that was being occupied by depression. I'm a loser. Ugly, like this and that, like all these things like that were occupying my mind. But there was like definitely, as you said, this little piece of me that said, well, maybe I'm gonna have a glow up, or maybe people are actually gonna start learning, how I am compared to other people. Maybe that's a good thing, right? But
Mhm.
it was a very, very small voice. It was like if someone's screaming, like a bunch of people screaming, like a crowd screaming, and then someone whispering in the back, like, "Hey, maybe." Everything's gonna be okay, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it felt. And I feel like that happens for a lot of people too, where you like it's kind of like your ego battling as well, like your higher self too. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's what happened for me because I really believe like in timelines and parallel realities and all those things. And what I feel now, just looking back, is I feel like it's myself right now telling my 15-year-old self, "Hey, it's gonna be okay." So that's what I feel. But there was a lot of things occupying my conscious mind at that point. So maybe it just was feeling like a whisper at that point, but it was still there for sure. And that, yeah, for sure. So just to answer your question, I feel like, yeah, there was like a little bit of a contrast there.
Yeah. I love that concept of your now self or like your future self being a source of encouragement and support to your past self.
A
I
100%.
I do that all of the time. Like I will take a moment and just like think about my 20-year-old self or my 12-year-old self and be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Friend, like let me just tell you, it is not going
It
to be this
gets
way
better.
forever."
It
Yeah.
gets better for sure.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
it's healing. It's healing too,
Yeah.
honestly. Like when you think about it, and like sometimes I even do these things like it doesn't even like I don't even plan it, but whenever I think about myself, maybe like when I was 15 years old, or when I was like, going through those like dark times, I like sit with myself, and I tell that person what I feel that they need to hear,
Mm.
right? And I'm just like nurturing that person. And I think I've told you this before, just being that nurturing self for that your small, like naive teenage person is
Yes.
so healing in the now, and then also for that person, because then
Yeah.
that's the whisper that they heard.
Yeah.
That's the whisper that they heard. So it's insane, like just the concept, and I love it. I'm obsessed with it,
Yeah.
honestly. And
Yeah.
it just got me to this point where I'm like, okay, now, like just going back to your first question, I'm happy with the body that I'm in now. But it was
Mhm.
super recent, super
Yeah.
super recent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. So powerful. Such a like accessible thing that really anyone could do, but that has such a
Yeah,
profound impact. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I recommend everyone that's hearing this right now do that. Like after you hear this podcast, like just go into your room, turn off the lights, like put some music on, get into the space and think about your younger self. Like think about your younger self or yourself in the past couple weeks or the past month. It doesn't really matter. Think about that person that was going through a hard time. That's the point. And then talk to them and
Mm,
tell them that it's all going to be fine, because you might
mhm,
think that, oh, that happened in the past, I'm just going to erase it. But as I said earlier, time isn't linear. Time is not linear. So just doing that for yourself is going to help
mm.
you now, and it's also going to help that past parallel version of you. So just a little tip right there.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Okay, so you're like 15, 16, 17. You said it like lasted a while that you were having this feeling of like, I can't, I like it's too hard to be in this body in this way. Like
Hmm.
when did you have sort of a gradual opening up to some of these different concepts, or did it happen sort of in a big way? What was that like?
Yeah, so that's a great question, I feel like, because yeah, the way I put it, it might seem like it was like a huge jump or something, but I feel like, yeah, it was definitely gradual. When I started feeling those feelings of like, yeah, I need to get out of my body, like even, I don't know if this word can be used, like suicidal
Yep,
tendencies, like all
yep,
those things. It
absolutely.
can, okay. Those things, like they were, as I said, they were at its peak, right? In a
Mm,
specific moment. And then as time went by, I actually, like one of the things that pivoted me to this type of thinking was watching The Secret. Like I know a
yes,
lot of people watch The Secret and it was like
yes.
the life-changing moment for them. But throughout high school, I feel like it was the same thing. And then I graduated. I was like, okay, now I have the opportunity to become a whole new person. Like no one's gonna know me. I'm gonna
Mhm.
leave all my high school people behind, and now I'm gonna start this new life. That's when I watched The Secret. That's when I was like, wait, manifestation is a thing and it can actually happen for people. Even though I knew about it in the past, my parents like talked about it all the time.
Oh,
I just like
interesting.
ignored it. Yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, they like I just ignored it, and then I watched it myself and I was like, wait, I think I can actually do this. Like I think I can actually like create my new reality. And that's exactly what I did. When I went to college, even though I had that trigger of like that persona that was like bullied and like, like I thought I was ugly and all these things, I still, even though I was scared, like presented myself as like a confident person. I was just like, hey,
Interesting.
my name's Heena. Like, like I had never done that before. And I started doing it. And I felt like, okay, this is not working out. It's scary, but I kept doing it until I found my little group of friends in college, right? And then that's when I started coming out of it a little bit, even though those things were in the back of my mind. And then slowly, as I went on through college, I kept coming more and more out of that shell. So it was really like a timeline if you
Mhm.
really think about it. And then I feel like when I graduated college, it just got to this point where I was like, I had this one moment where it all clicked for me, where I was just like, okay, this is my past self and this is the person I've created, right? Like, oh, sorry, if you're listening to it, I'm doing like a visual right
Yeah.
now. But like one side of it was like the person I created, and the other side was like the person that I was. And I was like, I've created this whole new person, but this little girl is just harping in the back of my head saying,
Yes.
like, yeah, you're still this person. So just the awareness of it made me just switch to the person that I created, just the awareness of it. And realizing that those two things were just like an inner conflict with myself, I was like, no, I decide to choose this new person and leave this other, insecure, bullied, loser person behind gracefully
Yeah, right.
with grace, right? So, and that's when I chose, and that was recently, maybe like a year ago. And then I just stepped into this new person, really. And then that's when I started becoming a coach to all these people, including you. And and that's when I was able to have that confidence about myself. So yeah, just
Yeah,
to
that's so beautiful.
summarize.
So
Mm-hmm.
even though there was this, like, it sounded like more of like a culmination of the experience of creating this new identity, but it sounds like the
Yeah,
transition from high school to college gave you, like a liminal space within which you were,
definitely.
like, able to identify, "I want something different." Is that how it felt?
Yeah, yeah. Like as soon as I graduated high school, I was like, I can leave all these people behind. So it was, you can, first of all, you can always create your reality any moment that you want, right? Any single moment. But for me, in that moment, as like someone that didn't know anything about manifestation, it was kind of like, okay, these people are the reason
Right.
why I'm going through this, right? So in my mind, read Psycho-Cybernetics, this is a lot about this.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that was the reason. So then that's exactly that line was when I was like, okay, I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna become this person, even though it's scary, right?
Right.
And yeah, so that's when I started transitioning. It was still like my persona was still there. So don't think that I was like, oh, I'm just gonna switch and that's it. And it was still kind of an issue, but these new people in college had no idea who I was. They
Yeah.
didn't see me being bullied for years.
Right.
So I felt like, oh, this is my golden ticket. I'm
Yes.
gonna do it. So yeah.
Yeah. It's so powerful because a lot of people try to create a new reality for themselves or identity shift within their same environment, with the same friends, with the same job, with the same haircut,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it is very challenging because you have
a hundred
all, like, if
percent.
you had tried to do that sophomore year of high school, then you would have come back with like the same people and they would have been like, "Oh, like you're in the same movie, it's the same script, like you can't just go off
Exactly.
script as easily." And that's why, like, I now it took me a long time to get there, but as a trans person, I realized that, like, the fact that I am in transition, like, forever and always now, like,
Mm-hmm.
redefining myself in a physical and psychological way and social way, and, like, every person I'm, like, asking to use different pronouns, asking to use a different name,
Yeah.
like, all of these things, so it gives me this constant, like, liminal space to
Yeah. Yeah.
within
Yeah.
which to be like, "I can be whoever I want today because I've
That's
already, like,
powerful.
pronounced that I'm just change," you know?
Changing. Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. That I had never thought about it that way, but for sure, like you're in that spot where you're like, I've accepted that I'm always changing.
Yes.
I'm always gonna be changing. So that gives you and I was talking about this in a call the other day. It's like that space of changing and that space of even uncertainty is the most powerful space that you could ever be
Yes.
in, even though it feels powerless. It
Mhm.
feels like you're like, oh, I don't know what to do right now.
Mhm.
No, you're at the point of creation. If you
Mhm.
decide that's perfect, you're at the point of decision if you choose to consciously do that, but if you're at that uncertainty point, anything can happen. And
It's possibility.
especially, yeah, it's a possibility. And especially if you let it go and you're like, okay, I'm going to leave this up to my higher self. I'm going to let this just the universe decide what's going to happen. And I know kind of like my likes, my dislikes, these things. Then that's the moment when things actually happen for you because you're just letting it go but you still know a kind of like a vision for yourself, and it's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun. Like you're not like this like person that's like, oh, point A, point B, like like you're not like putting steps to everything and becoming rigid. You're letting go.
Yeah.
And then that's when the universe has the opportunity to come in and be like, hey, let's do this and let's see if
Yeah.
you like this. And then that's when you have the point to decide, okay, I like this, I don't like this, let me tweak it a
Yeah.
little bit, whatever. Because
Yeah.
then you always have the decision and whatever happens at the end. But yeah, that's
Yeah. You
amazing.
get
I
to
love that.
play, right? Like, when
Yeah,
you
you
were
get to
going to
play.
college, you were like, "I don't know what this new Hina is." Like, this new Hina maybe, like, gets long nails, or this new Hina, like, wears, I don't know, orange pants, and, like, nobody's here to be
Yeah,
like, "Whoa, Hina, that's a new thing." You get to just, like,
exactly.
play with it.
Exactly, exactly, and the long nails, I never had that before, actually. If you guys can see the video, I never had long nails before, and that having, like, just, like, things, like, in my, like, physical self that I
Yeah,
changed were really powerful too, so that's I mean, you don't the physical isn't everything, but, like, small things like that, that can just, like, change your neurons a little bit
yeah,
are amazing. Because like you were saying earlier, like if you're in the same environment and you still want to change, what do you do, right? Like
mhm,
it feels a little bit like stuck. I would always say like the smallest things can
yeah,
lead to the biggest difference. Like doing like a different haircut or like
mhm,
changing your nails or like taking a different path when you go to school or
yes,
when you go to college or you
yes,
do just those small things, even if you don't think that they're going to make a change, they are because your neurons are wired in a specific way. So if one part of the equation of your neurons changes, then it's conducive to a lot of things changing.
yeah, it's like
So
a
yeah,
massive ripple effect,
yeah,
totally.
it's a huge like snowball effect for sure.
Yeah. And what's
Yeah,
fascinating is that, we live in a culture and a society that has really taught people to like get into like really solidified roles and this whole thing that now we're emerging from, which I'm so grateful for. But this whole thing about like get a job and stay in it for 50 years, get a marriage and stay in it for 50 years, like have a style that is who you are and like have the same haircut and the same outfits for 50 years. Like all of that was such a fantastic way to control people
yeah,
because
amazing. Propaganda was great.
exactly, because if we are so trapped in an identity and a role, then that creativity is also
Done.
trapped. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like you're create that those years that you're talking about, those were that's when everyone was conforming. And like that's a perfect example of how manifestation, the subconscious mind works because everything around you was that same thing.
Yeah.
So you just conform. Even if you feel that little spark of something's different, you die with settling. And that's
Exactly.
I think about that all the time. All those people that had different ideas in their mind, but they just conformed, and we're so blessed to be in this new age of like online virtual stuff. You get like even if you're in an environment that's toxic, you
Yeah.
can join an online community that like gets
Exactly.
you that support. You can still have like those avenues for yourself, and like if you're listening to this podcast, you're blessed because you have this avenue. You're
Yeah.
listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, I don't know, but you still have that avenue for yourself.
Yeah.
So always remember, you're not stuck. You're not stuck. You're always going to find a way, and in this new digital age, it's a huge blessing. And
I
it's
know.
been for me for sure.
We're so lucky. So, those early years of college, you were like experimenting, like playing with it. Of course, there was probably temptation and times when you were like it's not working. I'm always going to be this like sad loser girl who got bullied. Like, what were the
Mhm.
things that you noticed really supported you through those like doubting times or like times when you were feeling really challenged or like it wasn't going well?
In college, you mean? Like when I was in college?
In those early
Yeah.
years when you were first trying to, like
To change my persona and like no, yeah, so I feel like first to like preface what I'm gonna say right now, I wasn't like too educated on like a lot of these principles and all these things, so all these things came kind of like naturally to me in a sense. So some of them might be things that I wouldn't recommend to do, but I feel like when those doubts came up for me, and I still say this to this day, is that when you feel any emotion, you first have to fully feel it. Because one error that
yeah,
I made constantly was trying to block myself. And I
yeah,
have that tendency still to this day, where when I feel a negative emotion, when I feel anger, when I feel sadness, I try to block it, and it just creates more
mm,
resistance. So I would have changed that for sure, and that would have sped up my process quicker, and I wouldn't have had so many doubts. I feel like if I had just let my emotions flow through me.
mhm,
So that's something that kept happening. But even though it took more time than it should have, I let those emotions pass through the course of the years in college, right? So I was like, okay, I'm having this emotion. I'm gonna let it happen for a little bit and then block it and then let it happen for a little bit. So I slowed down
It
the
makes
process,
its
but
way out
yeah,
eventually.
it eventually made its way out. Exactly. And I think what I did kind of like to maybe help those doubts was just to reaffirm to myself the person that the new self concept that I had created, right? So with just like those small things that I was saying, like taking care of myself a little bit more, like doing my nails or like my hair was more done. Like those things kind of gave me that logical sense of like, okay, if you're doing these things for yourself, then maybe you're a person that should be respected. Maybe you should be a person that's
Mm,
more confident, all these things. So I was
mhm.
doing these small things in my physical reality that proved to myself that I had more value,
Yeah,
right? Because that
yeah.
was my issue, not having value. I always felt inferior. I always felt that I
Mhm,
was less than. So those were the things that I just kept reaffirming to myself. And also, I always put myself in uncomfortable situations. Even like
mm,
I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to put myself in this uncomfortable situation. I just ended up doing it because something in me always said, you have to do this to
mhm,
feel like that person.
mhm.
So essentially, I did anything that it took to become that person more and more. So, for example, I would go out to like a party, like a college party. Usually, I wouldn't go up to someone and be like, hey, my name's Heena, whatever, like, what's your major, whatever. I started doing those things. So I started going
Yeah,
up to random people being like, hey, what's up? Like, this person knows nothing about me. I can present myself as my ideal self concept right now. So it's fun. So that's like how I started seeing it. In the beginning, it was super uncomfortable, but I started doing just things like that, or like getting into like, I rushed for a sorority, a
yeah.
fraternity, sorority, I don't know,
Sorority.
Greek life, whatever. I didn't get in, but I did it. Like I
You
did
did
the
it!
rush. I still did it. I would have never done that before because I had
Yeah,
this mentality like, oh, sororities are super toxic, whatever. And I didn't want to get into it at the end, but it was just like such an experience that I would have never thought about doing when I was like in high school, for example.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. So you mentioned like you started trying these things and you just felt like you had to. And I feel like a common denominator for so many people that I talk to is that there's some sort of like other component that was acting
Mm-hmm.
like to almost like pull them like gravity towards their true
Mm-hmm.
self. And like when you talk about, there was the aspect of the whisper in high school that was maybe like your now self like coming back to support you. Like what was this pull, do you think? Like how do you um define or explain this pull that you had that was pulling you towards the uncomfortable ways in which you could start to show yourself that you had more value?
Yeah. So I feel like the pull that I had was really like coming from first, what I always desired when I was in high school, like it was like this years of me wanting to be a different person that I
Mm.
knew I could be, and then coming to the realization that that person could still be me. It didn't have to be someone else, that it could still be me. So that was one thing. And then aside from that, I think I had just set such a clear vision of this new person that it just kept that it was so strong, which is like I had designed it to perfection, not like writing it down or anything, but I had thought of it so often. Like I can see myself talking to a bunch of people, not feeling like I'm the person that's always quiet in the corner, or like all these things that I had just like constantly kept thinking about that it just got to a point that it was so strong that whenever those situations came up, I was like, I thought about that person. I was like, that's the person that I want to be. So in order to be her, I have to do these things because I'm never gonna not like I'm never gonna be her if I don't do them, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's where the pull came from, and I can really like tell anybody that's honestly listening to this or like even you, Z. I feel like it's with anything with manifestation, like as long as that vision has that pull, that's when you can say for certain that's gonna happen. Because it connects to you. Like it resonates. Like
Mhm.
it's not something that someone else wanted. It's not
Mhm.
something that someone else did. It could be parts of what other people did, but it just resonates so authentically with you that nothing's gonna block you. Like I like I'm just gonna tell everyone here, like, if I did it, you all can do it because I was like, I was that person that like hated public speaking. I didn't speak to anyone. Like if I had a conversation with like a boy I liked or whatever, it was like I would like go to the bathroom and like throw up. Like that was like the anxiety level that I had. And even so, that vision was so resonant with me that I did those things that I was super uncomfortable with. So really just get your vision clear and feel like do you feel like this resonates with you? Do you feel like this is something that you have always desired? And
Mhm,
if it is, you're gonna do anything in your control to make it happen. So
mhm.
yeah.
Mm, so beautiful. This future Hina that you were holding on to, like envisioning, and that you were like sounded like guided by, because she was showing you
Hmm.
what were some of the necessary steps to like become her. Was she modeled after like a character or a person, or like how did you come up with her? How did you see her?
That's a really good question. That's actually a really good question. I feel like she was definitely modeled by like people that I looked up to. I can't think of anyone specific right now, but I feel like it was really about the contrast because I felt like okay, I something I dislike that how I am right now is that I can't speak to people. I can't be confident, right? Or in the past. And I was like, okay, I see these people like in my high school, or I see these people like on TV that like can do that so easily. And that was like a part that resonated with me, right? So I kind of like I picked and choose parts of different people, like strangers, or like someone that I talked to at a bar once, things
Mhm.
like that, that I just what that stayed with me, that just slowly ended up fitting the puzzle pieces of the Hina that I wanted to be now. So I wouldn't say it's one specific person, but I like definitely recommend that if you have this like one person that you feel like you really fit into and you feel like that's the person that you want to be like, definitely use it. Use it. Like use the law of transferable energy all the time. Like I was talking to you about this the other day. Like use that
Yes.
energy all the time to kind of like jump into that person, especially if it's one. Like one person that makes it so easy. Like you look at interviews. I used to do that all the time. I used to look at I think it was Mila Kunis. Like
Oh,
I
I
I
love
love
that. She's
oh yeah,
great.
yeah, I watch her interviews all the time because I feel like she has like this quiet confidence about
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
that I love. That it's you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to be
Mhm.
screaming. You don't have to be like, "Oh, I'm here." But when you speak to someone, it's important and it's intentional. And that's something that she definitely had that I feel like I 100% resonated with. And I feel like that's something that I can do now and that people have told me about
Yeah,
myself
definitely
that that it's like amazing. So yeah.
did it. Ah, I love that when you thought about these characteristics or traits, you were maybe starting with something that you didn't like about yourself. I think for a
Mhm.
lot of people, when they're first trying to get into understanding like how to create their reality or manifestation, or how to make choices about their future or even their present, they're like, I don't know what I do want, but I know what I don't want. Like
Mhm.
I remember like several years ago, I was in some like money, like manifesty type meeting, and the person called on me for the
Mhm.
question, and they were like, what do you want? And I was like, I don't want to be a speech pathologist. And they were like, but what do you want? And I was like, I don't want to work in a public school. And they were like, yeah,
Mhm.
well, you just typed into Amazon like not a sweater, like,
Yeah, and
like
then a sweater is
nothing's
gonna come up.
yeah, like
Yeah.
nothing that's not gonna work. And I was like, ugh, and I just was sad about it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But what I hear you doing is, or did, was like, okay, I would like to not be the person who's really quiet
Mhm.
and unable to connect. So what's the like opposite of that? And then you
Mhm.
developed like, what would that person do? And sometimes we can be so like focused on our like what we don't want that it's hard to even
Exactly.
imagine our way into like what is a person who doesn't have that thing.
Yeah.
So like what are the ways that you were able to connect in with that, or thoughts you have now when you maybe have things that are happening in your life that you're like, okay, this is not working for me, but how do I imagine what would be the thing that would be working?
Yeah. No, yeah. I feel like a lot of people think about what you said, like, okay, I don't want to be this person as something negative, but that's something that you can use as a pedestal, like to get to where you want to be. Because if you don't know what you want to be, it's usually the opposite what you do want to be, right? Like the opposite of that is usually like what actually resonates with you. So if you're the type of person, or like me, that was like, oh, I don't want to be a quiet person, or I don't want to be a person that does X, Y, and Z, then think about people that do the complete opposite. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, okay, this is the complete opposite. Oh, wait, I actually resonate with that a lot more. And now it makes sense to what I want. So clarity can come in any sort of way, I feel like. And in the beginning, for me, it came from what I didn't want because I was such a negative space. But
Mhm.
when you are in a negative space, you still have to use what's in your availability to
Yeah.
like get to the other spot, right? So for me, it was that. It was just like, I don't want this. And then, like, I think it was like, honestly, like years later when I was like, wait, if I don't want this, what is the opposite? I never asked myself that
Mm.
stupid question, but it was like, like what's the opposite? And then that's when I understood that, like, even like with jealousy, like that's what I talk about a lot. Like when you're jealous of someone,
Mhm.
or when you're like, oh, I feel like this, like, oh, like like you have that feeling of jealousy. Jealousy is like the direct guidance to where you're supposed to be. Negative
Mm.
feelings, things like that, like even anger, like all those feelings are guidances that are blessings in disguise. You just need
Mhm.
to flip them and get to the other
Mhm.
spot. And like the reason I mentioned jealousy is because I feel like that's like the most powerful emotion that's gonna guide someone to where they have to be. Because when you feel that, it's such a negative feeling. You start thinking about bad things about the other person, how you can prove that they're not the right person that they should be or whatever.
Mhm.
And then when you just like let your ego go down for a second. You're like, wait, I'm jealous because I want that really, really badly. And now I
Mm.
can accept that I want to be that type of
Mm.
person. So,
Mm.
so I feel like just to answer your question, it's just like I really had to put my ego down, understand like even if I'm feeling negative, even if I'm feeling like negative feelings, it's just like what's the real cause of this? Like just
Mhm.
asking yourself, what's the real cause of this, right? And then it really always most probably goes down to like a want that you really, really want, like a desire that you've just been, it's burning in you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One of my favorite things about you is that you really seem to believe with all your heart that, like, the fact that you want something means it's a good desire. Like, it's an
Mm-hmm.
acceptable desire. It's, like, worth wanting. And I have been a person who has struggled so much with, like, the concept of desire and feeling like I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't want anything or, like, I need to not desire anything, like, so much asceticism entered my early
Yeah,
childhood.
yeah, yeah.
How did you connect with that idea of feeling like because I want it, like, that's enough for me to go after something? How did that come into your life?
That's again a really good question. I'd never thought about it the way that you put it, where it's like because I want it. And I always say this in the calls, which is true. And I feel like first, like just like the way that you put it, I feel like made me think now about like why. But I really feel like it's so rooted in I feel like the way that I would explain it is just like because I want it. Like because like because I want it, right? Like if I like okay, I would make a difference between like, okay, there are some things that you want that are not good for you, and you can think like, okay, well, I want this right now. Like maybe I want to like, I don't know, like have a bunch of brownies and like binge on like junk food, and I know that's not good for me. And then you can make the decision of like, okay, I'm gonna hold back, right? So that's something else. But with me, I feel like if it's a want that you've thought about, you're like, you think about it, you really go deep into it, you're like, okay, I really want this. Let me think about are there negative aspects to it? Is it something that would make me really happy? And then the pros outbalance the cons, or if it's really just a pro, then that for me is sufficient evidence of I should have it. And I feel like that comes from just like the fact that I feel like I understood now, especially more than ever, that every human being was created for a reason, right?
Mhm.
Like you were meant to be here. Like there is like one in a trillion possibilities that the sperm connected to the egg and that you're here right now, right? Like that's one thing. And you're here now. Why would your life be meaningless? Why would your desires be meaningless, right? Like
Mm.
if the same creator of the universe, like if you believe in God, if you believe in the universe, whatever created the world, created like the Appalachian Mountains or like the Mount Everest and the Himalayas, but that same creator decided to create you as well. Why wouldn't you be important?
Mm.
Why wouldn't your desires be important as well?
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
So like that's the way that now I put it. I zoom out and then I zoom in, and it's like I I have this desires because I want that. There's nothing bad that's happening, and it feels so like I don't know if this happens for everyone, but it happens for me that it's just like such a fire. Like it's like a fire when I think about those feelings. It's like it even makes me like emotional sometimes. It makes me like really like the feelings are really strong. And then I question like if I have these feelings, why wouldn't I have to have it, right? Like, why wouldn't I get to experience it? Like, I need to experience it. That's it.
It's so beautiful. I'm so glad you have that. I feel like maybe a lot of us had that fire kinda trampled on for too long, but,
That's true.
I see it in my kid, who is just 12 years old, and it's still
Mm-hmm.
there, in those especially in those early years, like, he loved, leaf blowers. The
Mm-hmm.
people in the landscaping crews that wear, like, a backpack and they, like, have the hose and they blow the leaves. He would take a stick and, like, for 3 hours a day, I'm not kidding, he would walk the neighborhood and be like, like, passion, passion, like, such
Yeah, yeah,
dedication, like,
yeah,
very
yeah,
serious about it, And I think that, one of the biggest things I've noticed from learning from you and in the program is, like, tapping into that dreamy, like, imagination that is
yeah. Mm-hmm.
connected to just desire. Like, I just love leaf blowing because I love it. Like, that is the only reason. I don't love it because, like, I'm
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't
serving
have
the
to be this
leaves
like
or
deep. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
For sure. Like it doesn't have to be like this deep intrinsic like meaning, like, oh, like if you look into it, okay, yeah, you can like get those deep meanings, but like it doesn't necessarily have to be, like your kid, like he loves leaf blowing. Like what does that mean? Like it just means he loves leaf
He just
blowing,
loves it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like
Oh
there's
my
small
gosh.
things like that that just like I like it, like
Yeah.
that's it. And like you don't have to make it like a huge thing. And that's like something that a lot of people need to hear, I feel like, because I feel like a
Yes.
lot of us, especially in the manifestation space, tend to overthink things a lot. And it's like, oh, what's the
Way
hidden
too
meaning? Or is this,
serious.
yeah, it's too serious. And life is not serious. Like, the more we take life more lightheartedly, the more we get to just live. Because it really isn't as serious. Like if something doesn't pan out the way you wanted to, okay, just you move on to the next thing, right? I was talking about creator consciousness the other day. Like things happen in a negative way, a positive way, whatever. But if you have creator consciousness, which is thinking about things as limitless and having possibilities all the time, then there's always something new. Like, yes, you can have the emotion, yes, you can have the feeling, but there's always something else that's gonna come up from that. So yeah.
Hmm. What are some of those things in your life that you just, like, let yourself just love for the sake of loving it? Like leaf blowing. Like, what is your leaf
Yeah,
blowing?
yeah. Yeah, no, that's also a good question. I feel like with those things, I had a hard time, um, actually accepting that there were things that you just like because you like them,
Mhm.
and I think that's because I'm such an Earth sign. I'm such a like Virgo, Capricorn, like all those like Earth signs, and I was like, oh, if you do something, you need to get money out of it, or you need to like
Mhm.
get like some sort of like reward out of it, and I definitely struggled with that. But then I think it took a while of me like actually doing e-commerce, which is something that I did before, where I was fully, fully burnt out. And I was like, okay, what do I like, right? And the things that I like and the things that I feel like I disconnect from the world is like painting and drawing. Those are things that I really,
Oh,
really like. Yeah,
that's
I love doing those things.
awesome.
And I used to see those things before as like useless activities, to be honest. Like, this is fucking
Yeah.
useless. I don't know why
Yeah.
I'm doing it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna keep them in my room and that's it. But then I realized like when I am actually painting, when I'm
Yeah.
actually drawing, when I'm actually doing those things, I'm in the flow state. Like I'm in the
Yeah.
flow state. I'm just like living in the moment, the like the most that you can in that moment. So like that's what I feel like really gets me out of my brain, and it just gets me into like it's like almost as if I'm having an out of body experience. Like it's like
Well,
my, yeah,
100%. That's when like
yeah, like
creativity is when you're in actual contact with the creator.
yes, yes, absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. I was actually thinking about the like the word to use, but yeah, you're like in contact with the creator. Like you feel like I'm not even my body, I'm not even like anything, like my soul is just floating and connected to like the stars. And that's what
Ah,
I feel like it really like feels like to me. And like I recently again, like this past year has been full of discoveries for me, and that's been something that like I was like, okay, this is something that I need to do. Like it doesn't really matter if it's productive or like, oh my god, society is gonna see, like I don't have to sell the painting. Like it's gonna be
you
fine.
don't have to sell the painting.
Yeah, 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 for sure. No.
Yeah, that pressure to
Yeah.
monetize, I feel like, especially in the past like 15, 20 years, I have seen it make people not have hobbies. And like there
Mm-hmm.
is a
A
word
100%.
called hobby because it's like a healthy human behavior to have things that you
Mm-hmm.
do not to be paid. Like
Exactly.
by definition, a hobby is something that you are not paid for.
Yes, exactly. And it's so prominent in the US
Mm,
specifically. It's so prominent in North America. Like I feel like in America in general, like I live in Panama right now. It's I can see it here as well. Like hustle culture is huge, where you just really focus on that. And then I can really say like when I went to live in Spain, like for a while in
oh, right.
Barcelona for a bit, it's totally different. Like
I
totally
totally
different.
agree.
People value like their
Mhm.
siesta time, like taking a while. No one opens. Like I was surprised. I was even like a little mad because I was like, oh, I want to go eat
Literally.
like 4 p.m. No, we're not open. We're
Yep.
having a nap right now. So just get the fuck out of here. That's when I was like, wait, what? Culture shock. But then again, great for you. Like you're having your time, like your you time, and as you said, like it's part of human nature to have like
Mhm.
those things that you don't do to get paid, right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you're giving yourself that painting time because what
Mm-hmm.
is actually like true is that when we spend time connecting with just like that part of us that just like creates and loves and eh, daydreams because there's enough space to get bored, like that actually is super productive because it
Mm-hmm.
energizes you and refills your battery in such a way that like when you actually come to your work, you've like expanded your brain and it can be used
A
to
hundred
have all
percent.
sorts of possibilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's super true. Like you're not even looking at it from that point when you're doing the activity, but it actually helps you because you get more productive. You get that free space of like, okay, now I relax. Now I feel like I can actually do my work in a more calm way, and then you don't reach burnout as quick.
Yeah.
You get that space. So 100% it's conducive to the goals at the end of the day.
It's a
But
little
yeah.
maddening that like everything is opposite of what we've been taught. Like
Oh, yeah.
the harder you
Yeah.
work, the like harder it is, even though
It
we've been
gets.
taught.
Yeah. We've been taught the complete opposite. Like it really like, yeah, like we I think especially as in the US and like just that bleeds into all of America, honestly. It just like back then I feel like it was just like you needed to create like a force of like workers. Like everyone needs to be a worker. I feel like even
Yep.
like honestly like the feminist movement was also to get more people
I
to work.
know. I'm like,
Like it was just
why did we do
yeah,
that?
like everything that like we thought was like maybe for our good was actually for our not good. Like, really, for sure, for sure.
Oh
But now
my
we're waking
gosh.
up. Now society's waking up. We're in the new age. Like,
We
I think it's
are.
like Aquarius age.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we're like in the age of Aquarius where people are like
Age
waking up
of
and like it's crazy.
Aquarius. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
we
very
see like
exciting.
I'm seeing tons of people just like waking up recently, for sure.
Yeah, okay, so I have one more thing I'm very curious about. So,
Yeah.
you are like, your literal job is like, your company is called Reality Mastery. Like, you are
Mhm.
talking you're paid to talk all day about, like, how to be a creator, like, how to do all
Mhm.
these, like, wonderful techniques and mindset and blah, blah, blah. Like, are there times when it feels like a lot of pressure or like when you feel like you're like, I can't even fucking do it. Like, how can I tell somebody else to do it? Or like, look at my life. What do I have to show for it? Like,
A
how
hundred percent.
how do you or like also like do you ever get just like exhausted of doing all these like things? Like, how do
Yeah,
you
no.
support yourself with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like I am paid to talk to people about, reality creation, all these concepts. And definitely first, like for the first part of your question, I get exhausted a lot of times. I feel like maybe the last month, like December was a really busy month. And I got to a point like that I was like, okay, I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories, but it's just getting a lot. Like to listen to like, negative things and like having to coach people and all these things as well. And I don't apply every single aspect of reality creation to my life. Like to be
You're not
honest.
a
Like
perfect identity shifter.
I'm not a perfect identity figure. I'm not. Like I have experimented with all of them, but like, I'm not waking up and like being like a fucking like monk, Like I'm just like I'm a person too. So I had to come to like the realization of like, okay, I know these concepts, I know they work, I know like every person is going to be in a different situation. So I can always pinpoint them to things that I've seen work for other people, that I've seen work for me, and that I've seen like that are in the modules and like make sense that would work for them, right? And that's the way I've taken it. Like, I don't have to always be the perfect example in order
Mhm.
to be a teacher. I can still be
Ah,
a teacher, know these concepts, and then teach them and have them apply it and let me know how it goes. But I don't have to do all the things that I say. And it's not because I don't believe in them, because I do, but I don't like resonate with every single one. Like, as I said in the other call the other day, like, I don't do scripting. Scripting is not my thing. I do more like visualizing. I do other like techniques, right? But I tell people to script if it's more for them. So it's kind of like that way.
I love that.
But burnout is definitely there. Like the way I support myself with it really is kind of like, as I said, first the awareness. Awareness is key to everything. And letting like giving myself that grace of like, okay, you don't have to be the perfect teacher. Like if you don't know something, just say I don't know.
Mhm.
And I've been doing that more as of late. Like sometimes people ask me things and I'm like, wait, actually, I don't know how to answer that. Like you can do your own research with that, but I don't have to be the perfect person.
Yeah.
And now when I approach calls, now when I do things, I feel more intentional. I'm like, okay, I'm giving my authentic energy here. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you take it, you take it, and then you take that home with you and you apply it. So energetically in that sense, and then practically, I've been doing like more breaks between my calls because before I didn't have that.
Mm.
But yeah, just giving yourself that balance. Like have a way that you can do it logically, have a way that you can do it energetically, and then it's gonna feel much easier. And that's the way I do it. So
That's
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a person that has like, genuinely, my leaf blowing is a spiritual learning. Like, I would
Mhm.
I no matter what, the one, like, through line of my whole life from, like, infancy, basically, is I just, like, love spiritual concepts. I love learning about it.
Same, same.
But the, like, shadow side of that is that then I, like, measure myself against all of that, and I'm constantly like, "Okay, like, you are not Jesus Christ, so you have failed." Like, I'm, like,
Oh yeah, like
constantly, like
morally.
yes, yes. I'm like, "Why am I, like, not enlightened yet? It must mean I am a super
Mhm.
loser," right? So I am always trying to take a step back and sometimes what I do is I just like watch really bad TV, right? Because I'm
Oh
like
yeah. crappy reality TV.
Yes.
Love is Blind latest season, you should watch. It's really good. It's really good. That's just
Exactly. That is the kind of thing that's just, like, need to like you were saying before, like, just take the pressure off, like, just let it be a little bit
yeah.
more lighthearted, and that is one thing I will say that I have appreciated from some of the calls that I've been in with Quasi, is that there are times when he's like, "Okay, just, like, don't do it." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just, like, be miserable and pissed and crabby, and, like, that's okay. Like,
Mhm.
is there a, like, something that, a friend of mine who has an amazing podcast that everyone who listens to my podcast knows about her, but you might not. Her name is Jessa Reed, and
Oh, you
she's
sent it to me earlier today,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, she's amazing. Um, but she says, like, "You can't fuck it up." She just says, "You can't fuck it up," like, all of the time, and that is, like,
Mhm.
getting into my system of, like, "Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't fuck it up." Like, is there a sense, a, like, way that you have of connecting in with, like, "It's all gonna be okay," kind of thing? Like, what is your version of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so I feel like the "you can't fuck it up" is great because I always think nothing that's ever meant for you is ever gonna pass you by, right? So that's what I always think.
Mm.
So I have had a lot of times in my life where I've thought like, oh, I missed this opportunity, or like this person was there for me, like in relationships, with business, like different aspects of my life, and I'm like, oh, I fucked that up, like I didn't do it the way I was supposed to. I didn't grab it when I should have. But then when I go back to that thinking of like nothing that's ever meant for me is ever gonna pass me by, I
Mm,
calm down. So
mm.
it's very similar to your friend Jessica, or Jess, I think you said,
Jessa.
that Jessa, sorry, Jessica is in my mind because of Love is Blind. But anyways, um, but no, yeah. So I feel like it's back to like that same thing, that same concept of like it's never gonna pass you by, and also everything's happening in perfect timing. So everything is happening in perfect
Mm,
timing as well. So it really just connects with all of that, right? Like it's just like, okay, I'm doing things in my own timing, and also something that really, really helps me is I was doing my best with the cards that I was dealt in the moment.
mm,
So that helps me really like reconcile with my past self, therefore being able to accept that in the now. So it doesn't make me
mhm.
like just, oh, I regret that. I regret that. Like the regret part is gone because I didn't know what else to do. Like I did my best in the moment, and the only thing I can do now is become better now. And
Mm,
that's it. And it just makes me like grounded. So, yeah.
mm. I love that one so much. My, like,
Hmm.
mission is to communicate that we are all absolutely innocent. Like, I
Yeah.
really believe that, like, in any given moment, in every given moment, every single human is doing what they can with the information that they have.
That they're given. Yeah.
Mm,
That's the thing. Yeah, that's when you give yourself like that grace. And I was telling you the other day, like you look at yourself like, oh, that's really cute that you were doing that. Like, like it's not like you're mad and you're like, ah, why did I do this? Like it feels lighter. Like you're
mm,
gonna feel it in your energy. Like it feels lighter. And then you just move on with your life and do what you can do. And
yeah.
then therefore you do it better too. You just do it better because you're not carrying all that baggage anymore. It feels better too. So
Mm.
definitely recommend.
I love that so much. Well, I could talk to you forever. I'm so grateful
Same.
for
Honestly, I
you.
love this.
Oh, I just well, we can have like a part 2 maybe.
For
Um,
sure. If the public likes
oh, they're
it.
gonna love it. And guess what? I don't care because I love it. Like I'm so grateful.
Okay,
And
cool.
so if people wanted to like learn more about you or get in touch with you, is there anything like that that you have to offer? No pressure if you don't.
Okay, yeah, you can reach out to my Instagram. It's
Okay.
at Heena Hemrajani. I think it's public. I just share personal stuff on there. I'm not like super, super active, but you can reach out to me on there for sure. And
Okay.
I'll answer any questions that you have. I love talking to new people. It's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, it's
Your
at Heena
created self,
Hemrajani. Yeah, my new created stuff that we talked about in this call.
social
Um,
butterfly.
yes, which I was never before. But no, yeah, the name is kind of hard, so like you can like maybe you
I'll
can
put it
tag
in
it
the
in the
link. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's just at Hina Hemrajani. All of you can follow me. But if I have a new TikTok or anything, I'll just let Z know so they can put it on there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. Hang on one second. I'm gonna end the recording and then
Mm-hmm.